Back with them twice in Florida.
Yep.
By car twice. Shit, fun.
Exactly.
He was like, oh, like,
Really, just brought.
CD.
And it's just,
Yes.
it'll be.
So
yeah.
we didn't hear all of that.
Oh,
you guys already got it?
Okay, I think everyone's.
I made a copy.
Very good, thank you.
Good evening.
Thank
You guys can start. I got to get
So see you online. We know.
But he's a.
We're streaming. Eh?
No.
I'll follow that.
Okay.
I haven't.
We're gonna make a decision.
Her.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah, a lot. I suppose go to the podium. You can go up to the podium. Yeah. I suppose it doesn't really. I guess, yeah, that way maybe everybody can hear. They'll be watching it tomorrow. They can learn all about it. The 4 people that have been watching. Fine. Silent.
Yeah, it's.
We'll call August 19th City Council meeting to order. Call the roll.
Abby Hansen.
Here.
John Hawkins.
Here.
Megan McFarland.
Here.
Matt McKinney.
Here.
Logan Welch.
Here.
Pledge of allegiance. Pledge of
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one
Approve the agenda.
Approve.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item 1, petition communications and requests. This is the time of the meeting that a citizen may address the council on a matter not on the agenda. Except in case of emergency, the city council will not take any action at this meeting, but may ask city staff to research the matter or have the matter placed on the agenda for a future meeting. Anyone have anything? Kirby, you've got.
Currently, right as of 1 July, Facebook stopped third-party software from streaming to their group policy. So that's why we have not had any streaming video. We had a meeting with Miss Darcy this past Wednesday to see what our other alternatives are. And I think John and folks got an email from Brian stating that since we can't do Amazon, since we can't do Facebook, our software allows us to do to YouTube. We got the credential from Miss Darcy Wednesday to try that, but we want to know what direction you folks want to do it. Brian did some analytics and found that during the meeting, probably 85 to 90% of the people viewing it were employees. So there's not a whole lot of people viewing it live. We had from 4 to I think the most was 10. There was one night, I don't remember what was going on at the time. We had like maybe 20 people that weren't, but that was a hot topic. I don't remember exactly what it was.
This is Facebook or YouTube?
Facebook. It's always been on YouTube the next day.
Yeah,
And it's obviously still been on Facebook the next day. So if we just record like we've been doing these last 2 or 3 meetings, then Miss Darcy gets it put on Facebook and YouTube right away in the morning. Right, and I send her the video and away we go.
that's surprising. I mean, maybe people watch it later. You know, because the beauty of Facebook is it stays up as a post, you can review it. Because I talk to people throughout the week after these meetings and I watch this on Facebook, and several people reach out after the meeting. So I'm assuming they watched it live or either semi-live,
I would say semi-live,
Huh.
according to the analytics that Brian did anyway.
Okay,
Yeah, or maybe it was too early for them or something, but now after the fact, the numbers do go up quite a bit.
after the fact of,
After the meeting,
views after the meeting. I got you.
correct.
What does it cost us to join, to join one of these, like,
YouTube, we already have a channel,
okay.
so it's just part of the deal. Because that's where.
But
with our
if we
Facebook
wanted to
account,
be live, what is it?
Same,
Same? Okay.
yeah, but we don't know, neither one of us have streamed live before to YouTube, so we don't know how smooth it's going to go or anything like that. We anticipate no issues, but about the time I tell you that, we're gonna have some major issues,
So
so.
you can't stream live to Facebook at all, or it costs something?
No, with Zoom, well, yes, let me retract that. Yes, we can, but we can't invite anybody else to come in then. There's some software that we've tested before, COVID and everything, or right at COVID, and we can't invite anybody in with it. So Zoom's at this point is our best option as far as being able to invite people, like, you've called in a couple different times and things like that, so. But that's why we got Miss Darcy involved last Wednesday to see if she knew of anything else that she's used anywhere else or anything like that, and she agreed with us that probably our next step would be YouTube.
And you said we're live now. We're live on what?
We're recording,
We're
Okay,
recording,
we're
right? We're not live tonight.
yeah, no. We're recording, and then, like I said, we get it to her either that night yet or the next morning right away. So she has it right away and she can post it and away we go.
Well, I would prefer to somehow stream live through YouTube. I know the analytics might not show that, but again, you're putting it up as soon as possible when you're streaming live, because they can jump into that live stream at any time. I've watched other live streams on YouTube before and I've jumped in late and you kind of catch up when you want or not, but I would prefer this meeting to be a public meeting digitally and in person, 6 o'clock on to anyone's access. So if it doesn't cost anything, personally, I'd prefer to stream live and then obviously just have access to it with the archive of YouTube, having it online forever. So
And the reason why we do move it to Zoom is because she doesn't have enough storage with the website to keep it on Facebook. So that's why it automatically gets rolled over to YouTube, because you got
yeah, it's unlimited basically. Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
With what we're getting with the channel anyway. So-
Fair question.
So your questions for us tonight was to whether we wanted to be live or not.
If I could just have a moment to interject, I'd just like to take a review of the recommendation with Kirby and Darcy and the team, and then I'll bring one back
Okay.
probably next meeting.
Yeah, we weren't gonna vote on it. We were just.
Well, it
giving
doesn't
you-
matter to me. I mean, if you guys are ready to make this.
We're not voting on it. But we were just giving he was giving us information. We were trying to.
John, there's I get a crowd maybe.
If you go on YouTube, it's relatively easy and it streams fine. Where you're gonna get in a problem if you're into the hundreds and thousands, you won't have any problem if it's under 250.
Yeah, we've never had that many.
Yeah, well, and so you won't have technical issues.
Yeah.
There can be, user error sometimes.
Wait till we announce black pad number 2.
Thanks, Kirby.
Yes, sir.
All right, item 2, minutes, claims, reports and licenses. Following items have been deemed non-controversial routine actions to be approved by the council on a single motion. If a council member or a member of the audience wishes to have an item removed from this list, it will be considered on its normal sequence on the agenda. I have A is minutes of August 5, for the regular city council meeting. B is minutes, claims, including payroll ending August 10th and the fund list. C is reports for wastewater, electric, water for July. D is the police department activity report for July. E is the fire department report for July. F is a street closure request for Bostel Espirito Santo Church. Probably nowhere near that, but that's it.
Move to approve collectively.
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Okay, item 3 is general agenda, public hearing. Public hearing on proposal to enter into an essential purpose loan agreement. I'll open the hearing. Are there any written objections?
I've received no written objections.
Are there any oral objections?
No oral objections.
I'll close the hearing. John,
Yeah, certainly. Staff recommends approval of this. I'm sorry, these are just the public hearings resolution. In regards to general obligation debt, the first hearing is for the issuance of the essential purpose bonds in the amount not to exceed 1.9 million for street, sidewalk, and storm costs related to phase 1 of the Fair Meadow project, currently near to completion. Second hearing is for the issuance of general purpose bonds in the amount of $655,000 to finance the City Hall HVAC project. These projects were included in the fiscal year 24-25 budget that was approved by the council earlier this year. Upon approval of these issuances, staff requests the approval of resolutions to combine the two issuances into a single agreement, proceed with issuing the debt in an amount of $2.45 million. I can answer any questions you might have.
getting a,
Second hearing.
okay. Let's do it. All right. So we'll do the second public hearing on the proposal to enter into a general purpose loan agreement. I'll open the hearing. Are there any written objections?
Received no written objections.
Are there any oral objections?
No oral objections.
I'll close the hearing. Okay, so we're looking for a resolution taking additional action on proposals to enter into a general obligation loan agreement and combining loan agreements.
Move to approve.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And B is a resolution authorising the city manager to execute 3 agreements pertaining to the termination of certain capacity assignments pertaining to NEL number 3 transmission known as the Ruan Lehigh, listed in this resolution as follows.
Yes, both Greg Fritz from Nimeka and Aaron Helgus from Allers is here to present these items to the council in regards to the actions that are proposed for these items.
Good evening, I'm Greg Fritz with Nimeka. Just to give you a little background on what this is, you might recall you kind of gave preliminary approval of this or to move forward back in December. What we've got here is just kind of a representation of the transmission system in the area. So you've got the 2 big circles there that kind of represent Corn Belt. You've got a red line there, which is the lease facilities. There's 2 smaller black ones that you own part of related to your NEL 4 ownership. And then there's that blue line on there that's WAPA. So going back to 1979, when NEL 4 was built, you needed a way to get the power from NEL 4 back to the Corn Belt system. So you had this ownership here, but you needed to fill that gap basically from Sioux City to Fort Dodge. So you were able to do a lease. Corn Belt did a lease, Webster City did a lease, all the other Nimeka members that are part of NEL 4 did a lease of that line with Alliant and Mid-American, or actually their predecessor companies, what it started with, like Midwest Power, but today it's with those. So now fast forward, we're in SPP, the Southwest Power Pool. And let me back up, that red line on there, you have a lease payment. And last year, that amount, the lease for that was just under $144,000. Now that's paid by Corn Belt, but there is that expense. Now that we're in FPP, you can use that blue segment to get it back to the Corn Belt system. So now you can go on this line that you own here as part of your NEL 4, and the power can go that way. It goes up to Spencer, and then that's where it gets on the Corn Belt system. And that can be done with no additional charge. Basin already pays transmission to cover your load, and that would be use of that line is included in that. So basically what happens is by ending this lease, Corn Belt saves $144,000 a year that they're paying on your behalf to be able to use that red line. With this though, there's a 4-year out notice. Mid-American has waived any fees. They have some various reasons why they did that, but they agreed to waive any of those fees. Alliant wanted that 4-year payment, but they agreed to do a net present value with a discount, so paying it all up front. So there's going to be a payment of just $171,588 to end that lease effectively now. And Corn Belt will pay that on your behalf as well. But by ending that lease, it saves that annual payment. And ultimately that helps keep Corn Belt rates low. Corn Belt also has that same lease, they're canceling it. And that will save them about $276,000 a year. So you're looking at almost $420,000 a year in net savings going forward by canceling this. Questions?
No, makes sense to me.
Straightforward.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So need a consent to termination of assignments for capacity schedule between Mid-American Energy and the Interstate Power and Light Company and Corn Belt Power Cooperative in the city of Webster City, Iowa. Go ahead and read all them.
Yep, go ahead and read all 3 of them because you're approving all 3 of them with
Right.
one
And
resolution.
then agreement for consent to termination of assignments for the capacity schedule between Interstate Power and the Light Company, Corn Belt Power Cooperative and the Webster City of Webster City. And a letter of agreement between Corn Belt Power Cooperative and the city of Webster City, Iowa, and Interstate Power and Light Company.
Doing this by motion, it's kind of worded funny because
Yeah,
it's
it is.
consent. But are we just moving to
It's the
consent?
resolution's approving all 3 of those agreements.
Okay, so I move to approve those 3 like.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Okay. So item C is a resolution calling for the question of authority to lease the city's gas utility system to be submitted to the city's voters in November 5, the general election, with discussion of the rescission of the resolution if any agreement is not reached.
Yes, Aaron Helgus is here to present on the matter.
Hi, Aaron Hilligus from Allers and Cooney Law Firm. Just wanted to provide a little background on the issue here. The city and Black Hills Energy are currently parties to a franchise ordinance and a usage agreement. And the franchise ordinance grants Black Hills the right to operate their gas utility in the city. And the usage agreement is in essence a lease agreement under which Black Hills pays an annual fee to the city to use the city's gas distribution system, which the city has owned since the time when the city actively operated its municipal gas utility. The franchise ordinance and the usage agreement, they both run concurrently, but they are it's for a 20-year period. And that period is set to end in March 2025. So based on that, the city has been actively involved in negotiations with Black Hills Energy based on the arrangement concluding next March. And what this requires is reaching an agreement on a new annual usage fee and an annual escalator percentage. Also requires a new franchise ordinance, a new usage agreement, and holding hearings on the franchise ordinance and the lease of real property owned by the city, and holding an election for the use or lease of the city's gas distribution system. And that's where the election component comes into play here. Now, under the current usage agreement, Black Hills pays an annual usage fee, which increases at a rate of 2% per year. And current usage payment is approximately $156,000. The consumer price index rate over the last 20 years exceeded the 2% rate. That was the escalator rate in the prior use agreement. So the annual payment has fallen behind as compared to the CPI. Like I mentioned, the city and Black Hills Energy have been actively involved in negotiations for the past few weeks, trying to reach an agreement on the usage agreement and franchise ordinance. Actually, still we're bargaining up to the point where while I was still driving here from Des Moines. So it's been continuing on. The good thing, I'm very pleased to indicate that the parties appear to be incredibly close to reaching an agreement on on a variety of things, and I'll go into that. But at this point, Black Hills has agreed to a 25-year term in terms of the franchise ordinance and the use agreement. And a transportation fee of $242,000, well, $242,439.65 for year 2025. And then an annual escalator each year of 2.36%, which was the 20-year average CPI increase over that term. And so those are terms that we believe that we can recommend to the city in terms of moving forward on this. Now we're still trying to iron out the details regarding language of new use agreement and franchise agreement. Earlier today, my colleague had expressed some concerns to legal counsel for Black Hills Energy regarding some of their proposed language changes to the franchise agreement and the use agreement. But in response from Black Hills attorney indicated that didn't think it would be a major issue for the parties to work through these issues. And speaking with my colleague Steve Nadel, who was engaged in that conversation, he believes that we're very close as well and should be able to work through that. Nevertheless, looking at the agenda, there are two resolutions basically, and it's almost 3 parts, and I just wanted to explain that. One is to propose that the lease of the city's gas utility system be submitted to the city's voters in the November 5, 2024 general election. And for that to happen, things need to move relatively quickly. We have to get the basically the council's order, get that to county no later than August 28th. So the first of the resolution would be adopting the resolution calling for the election in case Black Hills and the city are able to ultimately reach an agreement. The second part that is in the parenthetical in the agenda is to give authority to rescind a resolution if an agreement is not ultimately reached. We aren't there yet. It looks very promising. We look very close, but we're not quite there yet. And so what we're recommending is that that the council, if it approves the resolution calling for the election, that it follow with that with a motion to rescind the resolution if an agreement is not reached between the parties by the close of business on Thursday. And that would include, everything that we had discussed, or that I had discussed in terms of usage fee, the escalator, and the form of the documents, the franchise ordinance and the use agreement. And then our recommendation for technically the second resolution underneath this would be that there be a motion to begin the process of planning for the city planning to reacquire the gas system. And this is something that would become moot if the parties reach an agreement. And really, these last two provisions there, it's precautionary to protect the city's interest just in case an agreement is not reached between the parties. Once again, I think we are incredibly close. I see no reason why we wouldn't reach an agreement, but still would recommend to the city that they protect their interests and taking those two other actions as well. So with that said, are there any questions at all?
No.
Just to reiterate for the council on the item that you're considering, specifically calling the question, Aaron's asking for approval of the resolution that's named in the agenda here, and then a second motion following with the authority to rescind the resolution if an agreement's not reached. And then on item D, simply a motion to begin consideration of reacquiring the city's gas distribution system and initiate planning for reacquisition, again, only if an agreement's not reached on the next item. Is that fair, Aaron?
Yep.
Yes.
That's correct.
Black Hills is here. Did you guys want to say anything at all?
Am I free to speak?
Yes, yes, by all means.
Can you give us your name, please?
Yeah, good evening. I'm Pete Hamel, Hamell. I'm the general manager for Black Hills Energy for the state of Iowa. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council for allowing me to speak this evening. Black Hills has had a strong partnership with Webster City for over 78 years, dating back to 1946. We don't take that responsibility lightly. Safety is our core value, and treating the communities in which we live more than a partner, but as family. I brought together with me this evening members of my staff. One of them lives in Webster City. So we believe that not only should we live in a community, work in a community, but give back to that community. We have a strong tradition of supporting our communities. Just recently, Spencer, Iowa undergone a terrible flooding event. And we supported that community like we support all communities, giving back of our time, our talents to the communities in which we serve. My hope tonight is to listen to what the concerns maybe the city council staff has. It was alarming to me personally to see on the agenda a possible reacquisition of our gas utility system. That is our business in town. As any maybe local business owners, to see that maybe the city would acquire their business can be alarming, and that is alarming to me. So I just ask, we have some time until March 2025 where the current franchise expires. And we have some time to listen to the city's concerns, and we could bring forth some of our ideas, which could make a mutually beneficial agreement for us all.
You saying you want more time than until the 28th?
I would like to have more time, yes, sir.
And the problem that then costs us more money to go for a special election for.
And I think we can be supportive in that as well. And we can discuss that further.
I mean, ideally, yeah, I mean, if we work out an agreement, I nothing against you guys, up here in the council, we represent, that we're shepherds of the tax dollar and our economic viability, as a community. And, be honest, it was a little alarming to go to these steps too, but, learning a little bit about the history of this, Bob enlightened me earlier about, some precedents that happened here in Webster City back in the 60s, pertaining to the same issue. So, again, I support, open bargaining and communication and a resolution that we can both agree on. I hope that comes to fruition. Yeah, I would worry about a special election and how that would be financed if say we aren't at an agreement come March. And if this is just our bargaining chip, if you will, or our bargaining, I guess, power to act upon the motions that we have, I think that's why we're pulling this lever, just to prepare. So please don't take it personal. I am a small business owner in town, so I understand that, but again, from what I understand, we are still in good bargaining faith. We're still in a good cooperation, might be a good word for it. So I hope this doesn't hinder that. But I do understand, what we're being directed to possibly approve for insurance reasons.
I do respect and understand the position the city is in, and as a good partner, I will always respect that decision one way or another.
And I really appreciate everyone coming on. I mean, this is why I hope to come up, these conversations, us talking and coming to an agreement. I know some of it has to be handled through lawyers. No fun, but yeah, of course, I want to see this work out, but I do understand the recommendations on our desktop.
Thank you for the time.
You bet. Yeah, thanks for coming down.
you. This one, didn't have any questions.
Gosh, I had one. Very good. Okay, so by the way, you're giving recommendations on items C, D, and E, right?
It's kind of a two-part.
Yeah, two-part.
All right. So one's a resolution and one is just. What is it? It doesn't have a resolution attached to it. Is it a discussion, a consensus, or?
The first is a resolution for calling for the election.
Yeah.
The second one would be a motion with council's
Okay, sorry. It does.
permission
Sorry.
to send, and then the third one would be to reacquire. Begin.
Correct. That is correct.
So I just thought of my question. So
As recommended by your legal counsel.
So this would be in effect until say we come to an agreement, say it's another 25-year agreement. Would this resolution then be on the books, as an action to take in 25 years, or would it have to be re-approved? What is this set in motion?
Well, part of what we did in the drafting of the language for related to the election was to try and have ballot language that would allow for a renewal if that's something that the parties were able to do. The specific language in the prior election, it specified 20 years, and that was it. And so what we were trying to do was, there's the obligation to have the election, but it was to allow for an opportunity for it to get authorization to the council to renew
After the
or to
next
extend an
25 years.
agreement if necessary upon the expiration.
Okay.
So regardless of which way we go, the election requirement is there for this period of time, whether it's in November or whether it's a special election, we still would be required to go through.
Correct.
So it's all relevant.
Mhm.
If it works out this week, it works out, and if it doesn't, then we'll move on to go under.
Different analysis.
Yeah. Because we miss it by the 28th, we're not going to be on this year's election.
So, okay, again, say we come to an agreement September 3rd. Just don't know the name or date out there.
It's too late to put it on this year.
Right, no, it's just, but say we've already moved to put it on the ballot.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does that language look like that they're voting on if we've come to a good faith agreement that we're for? So then we're putting it in the citizen's hand to decide if we go with the contract presented or reacquire the assets.
Yeah, let me back up.
Okay, because I'm confused, like what?
Yeah, and offer clarity, Mr. Hilgis, if I stray from clarity, feel free to interrupt.
Okay, sounds good.
The question before you would be put on the November ballot irregardless. If we reach agreement. If we do not, it will not be on the November ballot, and we will begin the process of initiating the planning for reacquisition if we don't, if we can't come to terms. I have every bit of optimism that an agreement will be struck prior to the deadline. If it's not, I'll be disappointed based on the correspondence I've been a part of. But this is to answer your question directly, the same question would be on the November ballot.
Any other question? A call for resolution calling for the question of authority to lease the city's gas utility system to be submitted to the city's voters in November 5th, 24 election, general election, with discussion to rescind of the resolution if agreement is not reached.
Motion on the resolution for the election first.
I'd move to approve for the, to put it on the election on November 5th.
Second.
Did you want to roll call vote? Just all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then, so then we have
We need a
a
motion.
motion to this with discussion of rescission of the resolution. Decision of the resolution.
If an agreement is not reached.
And we're just asking to notify the county to remove it from the ballot if it isn't. So that's the motion is provide direction to staff to notify the county to remove it from the ballot if agreement is not reached.
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then a reacquisition of the city's gas distribution system and motion to initiate planning of reacquisition.
If an agreement is not reached.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is opposed? Okay. Item E is the second reading of proposed ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Webster City, Iowa, 2019, pertaining to Chapter 10, Article 2, Division 1, Section 10-29, entitled International Property Maintenance Code. Sarah?
So this item came before you on August 5th. At the current time, we have the 2021 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code adopted with several modifications and deletions. So again, we're just looking to re-adopt this for a recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission with less modifications so that we can enforce the code stronger with the current relaxation and maintenance of residential and community. I'm just seeking approval for the second reading of the ordinance.
To approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item F is a resolution authorizing issuance of cigarette and tobacco nicotine vapor permit for Quick Star number 1700 at 1515 Overpass Drive, Webster City, Iowa.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. G is a resolution adopting the budget reserve fund policy for the City of Webster City.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a policy that was developed for several reasons, because it's a policy document and we are comfortable recommending it be adopted tonight. If you so desire, want to have a second or third review of it, hammer out any policy questions, we're happy to accommodate that as well. But we are here presenting it for several reasons. The first is one, budget reserve policy is recommended by rating agencies that analyze the city's bond issues similar to that you acted on earlier earlier this meeting, we actually will be going into a ratings call later this week. Budget reserve policy is one factor that they use to assess the management of the debt as well as the city's capabilities for repayments. As you know, the rating is linked to the interest rate that the taxpayers pay on these bonds. So we try to do everything we can to accommodate the rating agencies within what's prudent to get you the best rating. In addition, and on top of that, really having a budget reserve fund is simply prudent because it will allow the city to navigate upturns and downturns in financial conditions while maintaining working capital, funding capital asset replacements, and retiring debt. Policy also assists the city maintain stable tax rates, mitigate revenue shortfalls, as well as protecting the city's creditworthiness. This proposed policy will apply to 8 of the city's funds, including the general fund, debt service fund, all of the utility funds, the sales tax fund, road use fund, and economic development fund. I will attempt to move through some of the minutia with haste, but to give an accurate description on what the policy sets out. So moving to the general fund, rating agencies for bonds, the city issues generally recommend an amount equal to 30 to 40% budgeted annual expenditures be held in reserve. During this fiscal year, the general fund has an estimated budget reserve of 57%, and potential forecasts indicate that it may grow as high as 65%. The intent of the policy is not to spend that down. Rather, it's just to meet a benchmark the rating agencies are looking for. To accommodate the rating agency's recommendation, the policy targets the general fund reserve at 30 to 40% and allocates certain percentage of revenue classes from the fund to achieve that target. If the fund holds reserves greater than 35% of annual budgeted expenditures that are approved by the council, those funds are to be considered one-time revenue, so we wouldn't be funding ongoing operations with them, but would be able to be allocated for the following purposes: one-time expenditures for capital and studies, capital projects through transfers to the general fund equipment reserve, increasing reserve amounts to the appropriate level for that fund. For instance, if you had greater capital expenditures in the out years, offsetting the impacts of economic downturns or accomplishing other priorities of the governing body. Moving to the municipal utilities, the specific funds covered by the policy include water, electric, and wastewater fund. Again, based on guidance from municipal rating agencies, it's recommended that those hold a minimum balance of 33% of budgeted ongoing revenues or 120 days of operating expenditures, whichever is more. We are fortunate that all of the municipal utilities have budget reserve levels greater than 35% of ongoing revenues, with the exception of the water utility, and that is in the out years, not this year. In the out years, and are forecasted to have greater amounts reserved by the policy. So today, 66% in the water is forecasted to decrease to 22% in 28-29. So we can sort of indicate that there may need to be spending adjustments or revenue adjustments in the out years. Wastewater is at 212%. It's forecasted decrease upon completion of the plant project to around 50%. Electric is at 58% and forecast to decrease to about 53% in 28-29. So that's fairly steady. In all of the municipal utilities, budget reserves held in excess of the 33% of revenues or 120 days of operating expenditures could be allocated for one-time transfers to the improvement funds that they all hold, or to the general fund for increasing the reserve amounts to the appropriate level for that fund, again, offsetting any economic downturns, or to accomplish community priorities deemed necessary by the governing body. The debt service and road use fund are also asked to have budget reserve targets. The debt service fund is used to fund geo debt held by the municipality, and they both have pretty predictable revenue sources as well as expenditure each year. As you know, the road use tax fund is largely funded with an annual allocation from the state of Iowa. As a result, their target, the target for these funds is much lower at 5 to 10%. Any reserves held in 5% in either of the fund, for any reserves held in excess of 5% for the road use tax fund may be used for statutorily authorized purposes, which is governed pretty closely by the state. Any reserve funds held in excess of 5% of debt service could be used to reduce the amount of outstanding debt or reduce the bond and interest property tax levy. We refer to it as debt service levy. Currently, the debt fund has a reserve of 10% and the road use tax fund has a reserve of 46%. Moving to the sales tax fund and the economic development fund, recommendations for these reserves level, I just mirrored the utilities at 30 to 35%. Currently, the sales tax fund holds a reserve of 72%, is anticipated to grow in the out years. Funds held above that amount, 30 to 35%, could be used for purposes authorized by the voters for the sales tax or to increase reserve levels in that fund. In addition, the city created a new economic development fund. And I determined to just mirror the recommendation for the municipal utilities at 30 to 35% of budgeted annual revenue expenditures. It currently holds a reserve target of well above 100%. And excess reserves of the target may be used for economic development or one-time transfers to the general fund or electric fund from which the sources of the fund were originally derived. There are no financial implications of adopting this fund other than budgetary practices, so there's no cash spending as part of this. I'm happy to answer any questions or gather any feedback you might have on these policies, preferences, or maybe policy disagreements that you might have with it, incorporate them into a document that I can bring back to you, or I'm happy to have you adopt it this evening. I can stand for any questions.
Very good. That was a lot.
Did you time me, Bob?
No,
No time. All right, it's good.
I have read the entire
All right,
document.
that's fair. That's all right.
Call for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Tim, that was easy.
Yeah.
So item H is the resolution adopting the business incentive policy for the city of Webster City, Iowa.
Thank you. Again, this is another policy that we anticipate becoming more helpful in discussions with businesses potentially locating to the area or existing businesses that may need assistance with retention and expansion. So under the terms of the business incentive policy, there's sort of three sections. First is sort of a business incentive policy that outlines some 16 different categories considered to be a public benefit for the city council to consider in the case of awarding TIFs. The second is an actual tax increment financing policy that serves as a document that can be referred to by staff in preparing those applications, as well as the council in considering those applications when requests for tax increment financing occurs. And then the third is policies associated with the Economic Development Fund and establishing some of those funds for a revolving loan. As previously mentioned, the business incentive policy outlines 16 categories considered to be beneficial for the council to consider in awarding these. They include retaining and expanding business, increasing the tax base, diversifying the economy, retaining local jobs, increasing the number of jobs, encouraging unsubsidized spin-off development, facilitating projects that would not proceed without assistance, removing slum and blight, offsetting the cost of development or redevelopment, encouraging fast-growing businesses, encouraging businesses that provide basic goods and services, create affordable housing, achieving any other identifiable goals of the city, perhaps in the comprehensive plan or other plans, and partnering with the with the Iowa Economic Development Authority in achieving the economic goals of the state. So that policy is the first portion of the document. Were there any questions there before I move on to the second? Okay. The second is actually the tax increment financing policy. It can also be expanded to other types of business incentives, but for now, we limit it to the TIF We may consider adding a section on abatement at a later date or other incentives that you may have. But this policy provides additional consideration for specific applications that come in under TIF. It includes some of the following guidance: utilizing incentives at the shortest term required for the project to proceed, prioritizing incentives for public improvements, site preparation, site improvements, land purchases, demolition, and environmental remediation. Prioritize the use of pay-as-you-go incentives instead of financing TIFs through debt, including requirements for developer equity in projects of typical amounts in projects without public financing. Assurance public incentives will not be used to reimburse property purchased in excess of fair market value, requiring adequate financial guarantees from developers through credit history and commitments from financial institutions, as well as ensuring the project is consistent with the city's comprehensive development plan or other goals of the city. As again, I mentioned, these are guide rails for consideration of TIF incentives, but they do create a clear path for developers to apply for incentives, clear items for the council to consider, and a transparent policy articulating the use of the incentives that the public are aware of. I can stand for any questions of that section of the policy now, if you've got any, or questions or concerns.
I think it makes sense. We've had, it's kind of been all over the board at times in the past with what people ask for from a TIF financing. So
Okay.
having some guidelines would make sense.
Okay. And all of them, you know, ultimately the buck stops at this dais, right? So you will be able to consider all applications that come through. The third is in regards to establishing a new opportunity for revolving loan through the use of the funds that were set aside as part of the Economic Development Fund creation in this budget. So this is sort of a piece of programming, or it's a program, but it's a piece of the programs that can be offered through the fund. You know, one advantage of utilizing some of those funds through a revolving loan is that the fund will be replenished as well as utilized inside of the community. So that the policy outlines the mission, objectives, and eligible activities of the fund. A brief overview are eligible costs: land improvements, purchase of land, machinery or equipment, building construction, leasehold improvements, affordable housing, and micro enterprise. Ineligible costs would be gambling institutions, lending organizations, land speculation, management fees, financing costs, debt repayment, refinancing, or working capital. The maximum loan offered would be $300,000 or 20% of the total project, whichever is less. The interest rate is proposed to be half of prime. That's something you may or may not have interest in. That's right now, I think, about 4%, maybe a little more. And then, you know, you could use, you know, another rate to consider is what are you getting on the rates for CDs at the bank? You'd want to make sure, you know, you were getting at least that. Or you could lower it even further if you feel that there's a need that needed to go forward. And then the term, it varies for use. The policy outlines those. So again, this Economic Development Fund would allow dollars to be put into use with modest return on cash for the city, as well as out providing guidelines for its use. I'm happy to answer any questions on that, and can revise, or I'm happy to have you adopt tonight if you're comfortable.
That's good to me.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Thank you.
Item I is a council member resolution authorising the city manager to sign and execute a loan agreement with Triple E Holdings LLC in the amount of $62,000.
Thank you. And we have our first applicant for the policy. If you would like to speak, you're happy. If they have questions, I'd encourage you to come up. But if not, no, I'll just present it. So this is a recommendation to authorize us to sign and execute a loan agreement with Triple E Holdings, the current owners of the True Value hardware store in Webster City, in the amount of $62,000. The owners have requested and approached the city for revolving loan funds for repairs to the buildings. The owners plan to carry out several projects over the next few years, and the proceeds would be used for those renovations. There are 4 phases to the project. First phase of interior work is already underway, some of it already completed. I'd just like to mention it's very nice. So thank you for the improvements you've already made. And thank you for choosing Webster City to do business in. We really do appreciate you coming here. If approved, the interest rate will be half of prime. The term loan will be 5 years with an option to extend for another 5. Payments will be amortized over 15 years. As discussed with the business owners, the roof replacement is essential before winter months begin. The application outlines other details about the project. It also identifies the goals that we believe it reaches with your current economic development goals, retaining or expand existing businesses, retain local jobs, remove blight or encourage redevelopment, fully utilize existing or planned infrastructure, encourages business that provides basic goods, and contribute to goals of the city. We have received the documents required and recommend approval of the loan agreement. I can stand for any questions that you might have.
Sounds like a good use of the program, and I move to approve.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item J is receive council input on the traffic plan for Pleasant View Elementary School during the Brewer Wilson project. Looks to me like we don't have much, I wouldn't have much to say on it. It looks like you come up with a pretty good plan.
Yeah, so good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to go over a discussion item for the Brewer Wilson project. I can ask Ted if he'd like to come up and talk, but as far as the drop off and take up for the school zone, we met with Ted and school administration. They would like to start the rerouting of the traffic beginning of the season instead of middle of the school season. And that was kind of their suggestion. Engineering staff, with the help of the city, came up with the rerouting option, which they were and thought it was a good idea. There's a few tweaks that they suggested. Suggested. One was so the queue where they're going to line up. Typically, it's northbound on the hill where everybody lines up. This time, it's going to be on Pleasant Street. We're going to recommend that there's no parking on the north side of the street. Typically, that would have to be an ordinance, and we'd have to do 3 readings on it. Since this is going to be temporary, we were curious if we could just put something up during, like, I know it's before the construction season, but school will start what, Friday?
Right.
So could we get something out as soon as we put locates in to make that happen? If you guys could approve that, so we don't have to go through the whole process.
Like a temporary sign.
Well, it would be for a whole year. I mean, because if it starts this Friday and then you're going through the winter, I mean, temporary signs and harsh winter winds, it's gonna blow over. I would do a permanent sign.
Okay.
And we would just take it down once the project's over.
Yeah. So you're talking just north side, Pleasant Street for
Pleasant Street. So they're recommending no parking on Ohio Street between, or no parking on Wilson Avenue between Pleasant and Ohio. As kids get dropped off or picked up, they will exit the parking lot like they do now, and they will head northbound to alleviate any foot traffic, or just keep it simple and clean. Have no parking on either side of that street to get to Ohio. The other thing they suggested was to put as they roll out the 4-way stop at the Ohio and Wilson, to put a do not enter rollout sign, do not allow traffic onto Wilson Avenue. So they have to use the queue off Pleasant Street. So that's going to not allow traffic to in.
I had a child there last year and I have another one going in there this year. And yeah, people don't follow the flow.
Yeah,
that's where they mess it all up.
And so with that being said, that will be rolled out. And then also I know you're gonna say, well, what about the other side where they always come in? Well, we would have something where it would be rolled out at Des Moines and Brewer. That's gonna say something like, new lineup used, Pleasant Street, do not enter. And that will be rolled out during the drop off, pickup and picked up. we'll have to rely on Ted. Ted does a great job with their staff, with the school system. You know, if people choose to try to cheat the system, I think he. He mentioned their staff and himself would kind of take control of that and make sure that's taken care of. I feel with our meeting that we had with Schneider Associates with Ted and his staff, thought it went really well. The photo that was, it's already got out on Facebook, but also that we provided to you guys. I thought it was a great idea. Ted's been on board. He said, let's make it happen. Let's see if he has any comments or concerns, please, now would be the time. But if you guys are okay with that, Ted would like to move forward, starting day one of school. So
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So first off, I can't say enough for him and his crew and our city and our people that help us get our kids where they're supposed to be and transported safely. They do a great job of all year long, through the winter, through the snow, through the start of the season. A little bit of background on why we want to start this now is a couple of years ago, we did that safety study. And one of our risks was at Pleasant View at the parent drop off, because we had traffic coming in and going out at the same spot. And we had people that were wanting to not get in the line and park on Pleasant Street, and they'd let their kids out and they'd run across 2 lanes of traffic. So that's why we moved to wanted to start this now. Especially with all the traffic that is coming off of Fair Meadow that can't go out past Des Moines Street. So they're coming through Brewer Street and cutting short and going out Pleasant Street. So we want to stop that. We don't want to add traffic where our kids are going to be unloading. It's an hour deal, not even that. We started at 7:15. We're done by 8 o'clock, over 100 cars and over 100 kids are into the school safely. So thank you for your support. I want to thank those guys and all that they do, and we'll make it happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
I would like to make a suggestion on this project from past experience when Pleasant View had a traffic issue, that they utilize the police department to help them direct traffic.
Yeah, they're gonna be there when I say all this.
It's good.
Once we get this, the first part of this, it'll be a little bit of a learning process. But the police officers, Mr. Tylo and the guys are gonna be there to help us make sure that people that aren't there, that don't belong there, aren't there, and that the traffic is moving in the proper way. So they're gonna help.
Thank you.
Yep, we met with them last week, so they know what we're gonna be doing.
I think from experience, because when they had an issue, my children were in elementary at Pleasant View, there was no stop sign. There was no police controlling traffic trying to get to other parts of town and to work, and I got broadside.
Yeah, they're gonna do all.
This sounds like and looks like a good plan, and again, firsthand experience knowing how that works in the morning and afternoon. I think this will work. The only question I would have is, I know some of the property owners there on that blue and red dash lines. And I just am concerned if they've been consulted at all, if they're not gonna be parking on the street, they might have vehicles. Okay. Good. Yeah. Is it, so we don't parking all the time? Yeah, I could foresee some issues with some of the property owners that park vehicles on the streets.
It does make sense to begin at the beginning of the school year, instead of having everybody used to it all the way through March. And then trying to get people March, April and early May to cooperate. It makes sense. Right.
No.
True.
okay. Call for motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You said for the whole meeting.
Pretty good.
I called, but I didn't even ask the guys.
We did it. We did forget to be.
Lucky you're all. Stop.